And welcome, everybody, to another victorious edition of the Assembly Call. I'm Andy Bottoms, and I'll be hosting the show tonight. Normal host Jared Morris is unavailable, though he said he may try to swing by. At the very least, he may be in the chat. But I'll be handling the show tonight, and Will DeWitt is with me so far, and Ryan Phillips should be joining shortly. So we'll have at least 75% of the regular crew to talk about IU's season opening victory over Eastern Illinois, which was not all that competitive, quite honestly, which in some ways is a good thing. The final score was 88-49. IU took control midway through the first half and really never looked back. We're up about 32, I believe, at halftime. And other than a slow start to the second half, which I think was a little bit predictable, or at least some kind of slow stretch in the second half, really cruised to victory. Overall, everybody got in the game, nobody got hurt, and nearly everybody scored. So overall a good start to the season for IU, and they'll be healthy and ready to go for Austin Peay the next game on Monday. So without Jared here, we'll skip the banner moment, and I guess we'll go straight to the bottoms line. As we get started with that, I guess one thing we'll lead with, and Ryan may have more to say about this as we go, is that certainly our thoughts and prayers out to those in Paris, some of the terrorism that has gone on there today, and definitely some sad stories coming out of there, at least what's really starting to surface now. So I know somebody tweeted out during the game, talked about that Will Sheehy is playing over there, and Guy-Marc Michel as well. So definitely some Hoosiers over there to keep in your thoughts, and just in general, some terrible things going on there, and certainly our thoughts go out to those involved. As for basketball, I thought, I guess I'll talk about Yogi. It's funny, we talked after the last show that we kind of take him for granted to a certain extent, just having watched him so long and feeling like we know what we can expect. But I thought tonight he did a fantastic job. The only drama mid to late through the second half was whether or not he'd be able to hit a three to keep his streak alive, and he did that, knocked down one from the top of the key, one of the spots that he's made so many big shots over the course of his career, and so kept that streak going. But I thought really what impressed me the most about him was how he set the tone defensively early on. Really picked up Cornell Johnston, who's one of Eastern Illinois' better players. Picked him up pretty much full court from the get-go. Really got into him, set the tone defensively in a game that I thought IU overall played pretty well on defense. I know that's the thing that everybody is interested to see this season in terms of how the team improves and how things go there. So I thought Yogi did a great job there. Also ended up with 6 assists, 7 rebounds, 4 of those offensive, and only 1 turnover, at least based on the box score I'm looking at. So other than making us sweat out whether or not he would hit that three-pointer, I thought he had a really good game, and the kind of game you'd like your senior point guard and your senior leader to have in a game like this where they're overmatched. And really did a good job of getting other people involved and having a great all-around game on both ends of the floor. So I think a good start to the season for Yogi. There's been a lot of pieces written lately about him and his shaping his legacy at IU during the senior season. And I thought if tonight is any indication, it certainly got off to about as good of a start as you can expect. So with that, I'll turn it over to Will for his thoughts on the game. We'll see if we get Ryan in here, and otherwise Will and I will just dive right in. So, Will, what were your thoughts on the game tonight?
Overall, I thought it was a really good game. Like you said, obviously it wasn't too competitive, which, again, could be good, could be bad, but hey, at least we got a win, so everything's all right. Really didn't sweat too much, besides, like you brought up as well, Andy, about Yogi possibly, was he going to make the three? Was he not going to? To be honest, that was the only thing I was really sweating about, and, I'm glad he made it, and at least it made the second half interesting. I mean, although I would have liked to see him make, the three, within the first minute, so we know the streak's okay. It's all, at least it's good to know that it still made the second half interesting and something to keep watching for. But other than that, I thought you brought it up as well. Defense, I was very proud of the effort that they put on that end of the floor, only allowing EIU to have, I think, 2 offensive rebounds. So really, they're just dominant there. Other than that, just I'm glad to get the game on actual television the next time around. It's kind of hard to watch Twitter, because if you're on Twitter during the game, people are tweeting about stuff that's already happened, and you're kind of getting some spoilers, which I like to be on Twitter during the game, so that was kind of upsetting. Other than that, the game was kind of live. Had to bump mine down actually to 480, so it was getting kind of blurry there for a little while. So I'm really excited to get onto my 50-inch 1080p TV there on Monday, so I can definitely see some of Thomas Bryant's highlight reel plays, and same with Troy and everybody else come Mondays. So that's going to be my opening thoughts here.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say, just to kind of talk a little bit about the broadcast, was, I mentioned this, I tweeted this out from our Assembly Call account late in the game, but again, thought it was a really good job by all the sets of students who handled not only the broadcasting, but just the general production of these last few games. I think it's a great opportunity for them, one, and I think IU has proven, certainly did last year, and this season no different, what a great program they have. And it's a real testament to not only those involved with the actual production, but everybody involved with the program as well, to get those kids ready and prepared. And just was really, really impressed. Thought the guys tonight did a terrific job. And so I think there's one more game that's going to be on BTN Plus. I think the IPFW game later. Not sure if that will be one that students will also be involved in, but if it is, I feel good about the quality of what that's going to look like based on what we've seen over these first few games. So while the overall viewing experience in terms of being able to watch along and tweet along with it, as Will said, I think it has been maybe less than optimal. I thought the actual work with the broadcast was really good. So kudos to those guys, and certainly kudos to everybody associated with the program there.
Yeah, I agree. I was just going to bring up real quick. I know a few people on the broadcast, Sam and Scott. I thought they did a really good job. At times, just listening to the game, I really thought I was watching an actual broadcast, from a big time company. They sounded like they know what they're talking about. They were really good, just, conversing and, breaking down the game. I really thought they did it with authority. And even the camera crew and everybody, behind the scenes, I thought did a really good job. Very good broadcast. A lot of my buddies would say kudos to them. Kudos to the IU Big Ten Student U group, because they just put on, great broadcasts. And I'm excited to see how this program's going to keep evolving down the line.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure I'll be wanting those guys back at some point when Stephen Barto's doing a game later this season. So we'll keep those guys ready and waiting in the bullpen in case we need somebody to come in. So I guess we can start talking about some of the other players. I touched on Yogi. James Blackman Jr., I thought, is a guy, not only because he led the team in scoring tonight, ended up with 17 points, 7 rebounds, was 7 of 13 from the floor, 3 of 8 from three-point range. And he was somebody that we talked a lot about after the Bellarmine game, just because he had struggled a bit there compared to how he played in the first game. Got his only basket off of a transition dunk, and so I thought he had a really good bounce back game. Seemed really engaged on both ends of the floor. Did a good job defensively for the most part, and thought it was a really good bounce back performance from him based on what we had seen and kind of what we were looking for. The rebounding harkened back a little bit to what we saw from him last year, where he was, even from the guard spot, a really good force on the glass. So I thought a good performance from him. What did you see, Will, from Blackman's performance tonight?
You kind of brought it up. He actually seemed pretty sound on the defensive side of the floor, which I saw him struggle a little bit during some of the exhibition games. So it's nice to see him pick up his play there. My biggest observation from Blackman Jr. today is going to be, it was nice to see him drive into the lane, and it seemed like the knee didn't bother him, at all whatsoever. I really like to see his finishing up on the glass, to me, looked more improved than it did last year. Last year, he kind of went up weak at times. I think he was still getting it, adjusting from high school to college. But, he had the moves. That's really the best way to put it. He just was able to just kind of just wiggle his way in there, find the open lane, get up, and then, for the easy bucket. I thought that was very promising to see him to have all that ability and agility as well. Other than that, he did have 3 of 8 from deep. We know that he's, pretty much money from beyond the arc. And even though he went 3 from 8, it's still the first game of the year, and he still has some rust to knock off there. But his shot looked as smooth as ever, and I'm sure he's going to be great moving forward.
Yeah, the one play that I really liked from him, he faked a 3, got a guy flying at him, drove to the basket, and finished at the hoop. I think, those are the kinds of things where he's, he clearly can make those 3-pointers, as we've talked about. But I thought those kinds of plays where he really does have a good ability to get to the rim and the ability to finish there. So I think that's something we'd like to see more from him. Just looking, quickly over the score, if my math is correct here. I think he was 4 for 5 from 2-point range. So I think that kind of diversity in his game is going to be important. And it was talked about last year. I think Crean mentioned this at times that he kind of got some of his confidence on defense from how he played offensively. And I thought tonight it was a little bit of the other way around because he did start well defensively and then got his offense. And I thought played a really strong all-around game. So a good performance from him. Let's shift to let's go to the freshman a bit. Thomas Bryant ended up 11 points, 9 rebounds. Was 4 of 4 from the floor. Got a lot of his shots late. I thought there were times in the second half when he was really trying to make himself available. They struggled to get him the ball. I think Jeremy Price tweeted out something similar as well, where he talked through, just that, sometimes the guys aren't even looking. And I think, again, that goes back to a little bit what we talked about with Chronic the other night, in that some of it is a mindset, some of it is habit, some of it is just not having had a guy like him who's in there posting up. So I think that's going to be a work in progress, but he certainly made himself available. And I thought, especially early in the game, his activity level was just outstanding. Drew a lot of fouls. Obviously, there were plenty of fouls to go around in this game, particularly early on, which was to the ire of most everyone watching. But I thought he did a good job really getting involved, putting the pressure on them. And Eastern Illinois really had their hands full with him throughout the night. Got in a little bit of foul trouble toward the end of the first half and missed some of that, but I thought came back in the second half and was really active. Even picked up a technical for taunting / I think just being really excited, which he seems to be. If there's anything we know about him from these first couple games, he seems to be a very excitable and exuberant young man. So I didn't really have an issue with it, largely because it was a 30 to 40 point game at that point. But I thought, I thought he really came out and played well. So he was certainly the headliner. But what other thoughts did you have about either Bryant or OG Anunoby and Juwan Morgan, both the other freshman front court guys who made their real IU game debuts tonight?
Well, you brought up a lot about Bryant that I've had in my head, but a lot of energy. I really like to see this guy play. I'm excited to see how this energy is going to just continue to grow throughout the season. I think it's just the more confidence he gets, which he already plays with confidence, but the more confident I think it's just going to bring even more energy and more, those like alley-oop, those dunk plays that we're talking about with the technical there. Maybe he hung in that rim, for a split second too long, but I'm not complaining. It was nice to see someone go down with that much force and power. He did have 11 points, and like you said, they weren't really looking for him. And I do think, in practice they're kind of, they're working on it. But once you get in a game, it's totally different. You kind of go into game mode. And for a lot of these guys, they're not used to having that big down there during these games. So it's just going to take a little bit more conscious effort. And I think after a while, it's going to be, it's not an issue. But once he gets a little bit more involved, I'm excited to see his role, expand throughout the season. But really, Bryant, you brought up too, he drew a lot of fouls. I think before the game even reached the 5-minute mark, I think he drew 4, maybe even 5 fouls. So, I mean, obviously he's going to have a lot of intention on him, and he plays very physical. And if we play some of the tougher opponents and he's drawing all these fouls, it's going to really pay dividends. So I'm excited to see that. For the other guys, Anunoby, 6 points. He went 3 for 5 for the field. I thought he played with confidence too, and I'm excited to see what else he can do moving forward. He did go 0 for 3 from the line. I'm sure that's going to get worked on a little bit more in practice. He got 2 boards. But overall, I was very pleased with his performance. I like the confidence that he plays with, and if he just keeps playing with that sort of confidence, I'm sure that everything's going to just keep working out just fine for him, and he's going to develop into a nice role guy down the line. And then looking at Juwan, even though he didn't get any points today, not a big deal. I think it's the we got Jared here. Hey, that surprised me. Jared, how's it going?
What's up, everybody? How's it going?
What's going on?
Not much. I just thought I would pop on here. You guys are doing a wonderful job. Had a few extra minutes, and just thought I'd come on and say hi. How we doing?
We're doing well. We're talking freshmen. So what do you give me your opinion? I'll continue to play host, and you can jump in. But any thoughts on Bryant or Anunoby or Morgan?
Well, you made your little joke earlier on Twitter about Greg Graham references. So let me put
I couldn't even shoehorn one in. I'm really disappointed in myself. I totally forgot about it.
Let me just say that I would like to thank OG Anunoby for bringing us back old school with the short shorts. Those look fantastic. I thought he really played well. I thought he looked comfortable out there. I thought he was aggressive, maybe a little bit too aggressive with his one awkward shot attempt in the second half, which apparently Tom Crean's face said all that you need to know about that one. But I thought he and Juwan Morgan both looked good out there. And I'll tell you what I like about Juwan, OG, and Thomas Bryant is just how hard they play on both ends and how low they play on defense. Because that was my other big observation from this game, and really my banner moment, was this team looked like it was enjoying playing hard on defense. And I can't say that's something that we saw a lot last year. And obviously it wasn't perfect. There's lots of little things to clean up, but I thought the approach that we had hoped to see on defense and that we saw in spurts in the exhibition games, I thought we saw that a lot tonight, and that's what I was most encouraged by. And I thought in a lot of ways, the freshmen kind of lead us in that, because those guys get in there and they play hard and they play low and they're good fundamental defensive players for freshmen, and that was really good to see.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Morgan struggled a little bit at times getting in the flow, and I think that was why he didn't come back in till so late in the second half. But I thought Anunoby really, the latter part of as I tried to write notes. See, you not being here, I actually tried to take notes during the game. It's really a lot more work than I'm used to. But I did write down just that he did some great things late in the half, and they went on a couple really big runs to extend the lead over those last couple segments. I mean, over the last, I think it was 25-14 at the under 8 timeout, and ended up being 49-17 going in. And I think he was in there for most of those last 5-6 minutes. I thought he did just a lot of good little things, like you said. I think that from everybody's thoughts on Twitter, it sounded like Crean's head was about to explode when he took the shot, where he literally wasn't looking at the basket. But at least he followed his shot and got his own rebound. So I thought that was a positive. And I think quite honestly, with those two guys, Bryant, while there are sure to be the freshman ups and downs, I think people have an expectation that those will be minimized with him. And I think with Morgan and Anunoby, there's probably a little bit more leeway and understanding of the fact that you're probably going to get some roller coaster type games with these guys, and one's going to be up and one's going to be down. And so I think that's good. And what you do like about a game like this is that at least those guys got to pick up some really good, some really good experience and get some minutes. And I thought they both handled themselves well, especially Anunoby. Which is going to be key, and both guys got to bring the ball up the floor a couple times, I think. So showing some versatility in that regard, but definitely activity level is really high, and I think from a bench guy who you might expect 8 to 10 minutes a game from, that's really what you're looking for. I think I tweeted that out at some point toward the end of the first half, that Anunoby doing the kind of things that somebody in his role for this team needs to do. So if he can do that on a consistent basis, I think that's incredibly helpful to how the team's going. So,
Hey, I want to jump in real quick with something on OG. It was kind of funny. I was watching the game with Heather, and when he checked in for the first time, I was trying to sound all smart, and I was like, OG is going to be a good player. It may take him a couple of years to really, kind of feel comfortable out there, get in the flow. And that was the thing that was the most pleasantly surprising about him tonight, is just how comfortable he looked. I mean, like you talked about, at the end of the first half, during that big run, he looked really good out there. And, again, had a few freshman moments. He's going to have those. He's going to have ups and downs. I mean, we saw that from those two guys just in the exhibition games. But I just thought the comfort level that he played with out there for most of his minutes was just really, really encouraging to see. And like you said, it's so important for, good Tom Crean teams have had role players off the bench that you can count on. The 2012 team, the 2013 team, they had those guys that knew their roles. You could kind of count on them, and it's been a little bit up and down with that the last couple of years, and it's tough to count on freshmen in terms of knowing what to expect from game to game. But if those guys can really understand their roles, and as the season goes on, once we get into Big Ten play, get comfortable filling them on a game-to-game basis, that will be so huge in terms of just raising the ceiling for this team just a little bit higher.
Yeah, so as we talk about guys playing an important role off the bench, that seems like as good a segue as any to get to Rojo, so we can have our weekly, or now I guess probably bi-weekly meeting of the Robert Johnson fan club. So definitely he came in, of course, tonight, right off the bench, cold, hits a 3 right away. hit 4 threes on the night, ended up with 12 points, scored all his points on threes, 3 assists, a couple rebounds, did have 3 turnovers, but I thought played really good defense again. He and Yogi really felt like a tag team where they just took turns harassing Cornell Johnson up and down the court, and I thought he carried over a lot of what we saw and really liked from him in the exhibition games. And I think, again, while we did see a change in the starting lineup tonight with Hartman sliding in there for Bielfeldt, I'm not so sure that we see a change that puts Robert Johnson there because he has done so well coming off the bench. So curious to see what you guys think about whether that's a role that Crean will keep him in because he's played so well and seems to excel in that, or something that you see he may work his way into the starting lineup if he keeps playing this well. Jared, I'll kick it to you first, and then Will, you can jump in if you want.
Yeah, I joked with Heather about that tonight, that you and I were starting the Robert Johnson fan club. I mean, I think he's played just terrific basketball here early, doing exactly what you need a guy like him to do coming in off the bench. And I think he's leading with his defensive intensity. I love seeing him pick up guys in the full court just to make it a little bit uncomfortable for guys. And I love seeing him step in and nail that three. I mean, ice cold off the bench, first touch of his first possession, he makes a three after struggling a little bit in the exhibition season. This is a guy who, we've talked a lot about his potential as a 4-year player to continue getting better. And I think his scoring will be up and down this season. I think that's just kind of how it'll be with so many offensive options on this team. But I think he's a guy that, I guess your question is, will Tom Crean keep him in the sixth-man role? My guess is yes, but I think we'll see him start a few games too. I mean, I think, I think we'll probably see a lot of different lineups early in the season as Coach Crean tries to get comfortable and figure out what the best matchups are. But I do tend to think that when we get into Big Ten season, he's going to settle into that role because he's so good as that really as the first ball handler coming off the bench and the guy who can take that load off of Yogi. And just because when he comes in, he brings that intensity, not just scoring points, but he really ups the defensive intensity. And I think that's the big thing that you see him provide, and that's why there's been such a bump each time he's come in. And so he's just got to keep doing what he's doing. And I think if he does, then that very well may be the role he settles into. But what's most important is that I think at the end of games, he will be on the floor because he, more than anybody else on our team, makes it uncomfortable for opposing offenses to do what they want to do, and that's going to be really key in crunch time.
Okay, so if you guys are starting the Robert Johnson fan club, I have a pen, so I definitely want to sign up right now because I think he's going to have a very, very solid, sound season. He might not put up the flashiest numbers, he might not have the flashiest plays, but he's going to do a lot of the dirty work, and he's going to just kind of be that consistent guy coming off the bench. I think he, like Jared, you brought up, I think he brings a spark, the intensity, which is what you need off the bench, and I think that he did a great job of that tonight. Johnson 4 from 8, from the field, and 4 from, and all 4 of his shots were 3-point shots. He went 4 from 6 from deep. So that is some precise shooting that we definitely need there on the outside. But really, I liked what I saw from him. Throughout the offseason, we heard a lot about his progression, and I think that he's definitely progressed, and I'm excited to see how he's going to keep progressing throughout the season because I don't think we're done, guys. I really think that he's going to take this season and just continuously progress as we go about it, which is quite exciting to see. Other than that, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I said, we already know he's on the Greg Graham developmental path, so if I couldn't get him in on Twitter, I'm going to just jam as many in on here as possible. So Will, one of the things that we kind of talked about, I think Jared included this in the newsletter, was you were going to try to find a stat or two that really stood out to you as you kind of look through the box score or other things after each game. So we kind of kicking around a couple ideas in the chat here, but I think you landed on one that was pretty important and something that was a huge theme of the game throughout. So maybe some rebounding stats that stood out to you.
Well, I mean, you just look at total rebounds, guys. I mean, 51-17. That is just like complete and utter dominance on the boards. I mean, and then if you keep looking here, offensive rebounds, even though it ended up with 5. I mean, there was the majority of the game they had 0 to 1 until maybe the last 5 minutes. I mean, that's excellent, guys. Which I mean, I understand the level of talent on the other team isn't quite going to be what the other teams coming up are going to be, but still it's promising to see, this huge of a difference in our favor for rebounds. And on IU, we had 21 offensive rebounds today as well, which leads into another interesting stat I have for today is we had 26 second chance points off those 21 rebounds compared to only one second chance points for EIU. So obviously those are some big keys that I thought were definitely a factor in today's game.
I'll tell you one other stat too that really jumped out at me when when you look at these advanced stats is the assist rate of 47%. That's something that in that second exhibition game, that number was lower. I think it was down, I don't know, like in the 25%, something like that. I don't remember it exactly. But we talked about how much more efficient Indiana is shooting when they get the ball into the paint off of the drive and then kick it out to shooters, and we saw that again tonight. And I thought the ball movement was a lot better. And 47%, because Indiana had 15 assists on 32 made baskets, that's much more in line with what we want to see from them. And so that, obviously the rebound numbers are just, mind-bogglingly good. But from an offensive standpoint, you love seeing the ball movement. You love seeing guys creating, kicking, and not quite so much of just the one-on-one scoring that we saw a little bit in that second exhibition game.
Yeah, the rebounding was interesting. I was tracking it pretty good in the second half because they had given up 0 offensive rebounds through the first half, and it's not too often that usually you look at the advanced stats and the offensive rebounding percentage for the other team is at 0. Although I think it was that way a little bit for the beginning of the Bellarmine game, but it got to halftime that way, and then I saw that somebody had said that they had gotten 1. Well, whatever I was looking at didn't have 1, and somebody pointed out that when Anunoby blocked a shot out of bounds, that counted as a team offensive rebound. So for a while, until about the 7-minute mark, that was the only offensive rebound that IU had given up. And
freshman
I think,
mistake.
Yeah, keep it in bounds. Watch some Bill Russell tapes or something. So we need to, but I think it's funny that certainly the talent level and the size and all those things are a factor. But you can luck into offensive rebounds pretty easily, especially some of the shots from deep, just getting long rebounds and whatever else. I thought that was just really good. A lot of good fundamental blockouts and things like that. And when you look, it really was a team effort. There were 5 guys who had at least 7 rebounds in this game. So James, Yogi, Troy, Bielfeldt, and Thomas Bryant all had at least 7 rebounds in the game, and then a number of other guys had 2 or 3. So definitely a team effort on the glass. I think a good thing, and that's one of the things that to throw a Bob Knightism out there. The defensive possession isn't over until you get that rebound, and so that's another way that this team, even if it isn't the best fundamentally or other ways on defense, it is a way that they can get better and continue to really clean up that the defensive glass and keep that keep the other team from getting second chance points. So I thought that was good. And your point about the assist is a good one as well. I thought I mentioned Yogi earlier about how unselfish I felt like he was. Really passing up shots, kicking it out to other guys. Zaislov didn't score, but he had 3 assists in 16 minutes, which is really good. Robert Johnson with 3 assists. So just to, again, had other guys looking to hit open men as they went. Thomas Bryant there toward the end, particularly on the pick and roll where he got the dunk and the technical. Nice pass from Troy on that. So definitely a lot of good things statistically to talk through tonight.
And it's another stat. We should mention this. The official Indiana men's basketball Twitter account just tweeted this out. Tonight was the 1,000th home win in Indiana basketball history, which is mind-bogglingly incredible.
There you go.
1,000 home wins. That's amazing.
Not bad. Not too bad. All right, so let's hit a couple other players here, and then we can probably wrap this one up. So Troy, we haven't talked about Troy. He's been one of the first guys we've talked about over the 2 exhibition shows, so probably makes sense to talk about him. I thought, from my perspective, he was really active again at the beginning of the game. Ended with 12 points, 8 rebounds. Did end up with 4 fouls, so maybe a little bit overly active. Struggled, missed his first 4 free throws, made the next 4, but only 1 turnover, which I thought was really important. We talk so much about him staying under control and all those things, and I thought that he did, by and large, did a pretty good job of that tonight. Made some nice drives to the basket, shot a couple threes that were largely within the flow of the offense, so didn't make either one, but one was right off the catch, and another one I think was when the shot clock was going down. So didn't think either of those was a bad shot. And like I said, I thought he did a good job getting other people involved. I think defensively, still a work in progress. There were times that I wrote down where he was really just doing a lot of gambling and reaching, and sometimes that worked, and sometimes it didn't. But I thought overall a pretty good performance from him, and certainly after 10 turnovers in those exhibition games, to see a 1 in that spot on the box score, I think makes everybody feel a little bit better, regardless of who the competition is. So, Jared, anything you saw from Troy tonight that you wanted to touch on?
Hey, do you remember off the top of your head how many assists he had in the first 2 exhibition games? I don't. I feel like he had a few each game, though.
I do, and what I'm looking at shows he had none tonight, but I feel like he was the guy who passed to Brian on that dunk, but I could be remembering that incorrectly. But I showed him a 0 tonight. I don't know that he had a lot either, but I did think he kept the ball moving pretty well tonight, so I was a little bit surprised to see he didn't pick up at least 1 or 2 assists.
Yeah, and that's, I thought Troy played well. I mean, again, it's Troy, so you're going to get that mixed bag with the good Troy and the bad Troy moments, but, a lot of people were talking about how he had those 10 turnovers in the 2 exhibition games. And we know that turnovers have been a bugaboo for Troy, and seeing those 10 turnovers in the exhibition games wasn't great. But tonight you get the 1. Now, the flip side of that is, Troy gets turnovers, but a lot of times those come when he's also making good things happen for other people and for himself and for the team. And so I realize he's got to maximize the good and try and eliminate some of those turnovers. And I thought we saw some of that tonight. Only the 1 turnover, had 12 points, had the 8 rebounds. I agree with what you were saying about the defense, and that just comes down to, the fundamentals and the awareness. I tweeted out earlier the Draft Express scouting videos of Troy. They go through his strengths and his weaknesses. Really, really educational about Troy as a player, because I think sometimes we get caught up in the turnovers, we get caught up in the mistakes, and we forget about the fact that Troy Williams can make plays that maybe only 3, 4, or 5 other players in the country can make. Case in point, that block shot against Bellarmine where he ran down half court, blocked the shot, and then hustles back to get the rebound, leads the break, and it turns into a James Blackman dunk. And it's important to remember that with Troy. And I think on a night like tonight, where you don't see that big glaring crooked number in the turnover category, it's a little bit easier to see. But I think this is the type of game that we're going to need from Troy when the offense is clicking. Because when Blackman's scoring, 17 points and you've got 6 guys in double figures, Troy doesn't need to be, scoring 17, 18, 19 points and forcing the issue. He needs to do what he did tonight, play within himself, get his double figures, get 7, 8, 9 rebounds, and do exactly what he did. And I was also really impressed that he missed those first 4 free throws and came right back and made the next 4. I think just little things like that show the maturity that we want to see from him now in his junior season.
All right, so the other thing to touch on before we wrap up is, there was a starting lineup change going into this evening's game. So Max Bielfeldt ended up not starting the game after starting the 2 exhibitions, and Colin Hartman was in the starting lineup in his place. And I think that is something that we talked about with Chronic after the game the other night, about whether we thought that would stay that way or whether or not he might work his way in. I think we all thought there might be games that he would start. I don't know that any of us would have suspected that one of those would be the opener. But if you look at the stat lines of the guys over the course of the game, I think Hartman was one of the few guys that went scoreless. He did have 3 rebounds, all on the offensive end. Had an assist, and I thought generally played well. Did a lot of the things that he normally does. Was in good position on defense. As we've come to expect. And Bielfeldt did really well in his role off the bench, scoring 11 points and grabbing 8 rebounds. So he was 5 of 6 from the free throw line, 3 of 3 from the floor, and I thought played really well, was really active on the offensive glass. Showed as only having 3 offensive rebounds. I would have guessed that number was a little bit higher, but kept some balls alive, and I thought really did a great job providing some other energy off the bench. So, Will, I'll throw this one to you first. I guess anything that you saw from those 2 players, and then Jared, if you want to maybe talk to whether you think that's something that we see sustained after this, or something that we may continue to see change from game to game over the course of the season.
Well, I think you kind of touched a little bit there on Hartman. Even though he was scoreless, I still think he impacted the game, in a positive way. Definitely with his offensive rebounds, keeping the ball alive, which led to some of our second chance points. So, even though he was scoreless, I think, he's going to brush it off, first game jitters, and in a game like this, it doesn't really matter too much. I'm sure he'll be fine moving on in the season. I'm not really worried about him. But, talking about Max, he's someone who I've been high on, throughout the whole offseason that, on our shows, who I think is going to be one of those sneaky players who are just going to put up those sound numbers. They're not going to put up, the best numbers or have the most flashy plays. But if you look at Max, 11 points, he was perfect 3 from the field. He only missed 1 free throw, and then he had 8 rebounds. I mean, what more do you want from your 6-man off the bench guys? I mean, that's perfectly, acceptable, and I think that that's everything that I expect him to do, each and every game. I think he's going to be that consistent guy who can go out there and make his open shots and get the rebounds and just, be an overall great producer for this offense and defense on the boards.
Yeah, I really liked from Max, the efficiency, the 3 for 3, 5 from 6 from the free throw line. Again, another, kind of one of those little mini themes we saw from the exhibition season that we were asking questions about is Max having a bit of an itchy trigger finger shooting the basketball on such a good offensive team? And I thought tonight played really well within himself. One of his buckets was a really nice post move down low, and I think if he can do what he did tonight and get his offense without forcing shots, that's great. I mean, this tonight was the perfect Max Bielfeldt game. Thought he did a good job. Colin Hartman, for anybody, I know it's been an off season, and so perhaps we forget, or if this is your first time, tuning into the show, Colin Hartman, of all the Hoosiers, the box score numbers tell the least about how he actually played. My coach in high school always used to say, there's a big difference between shooting well and playing well. And tonight, Colin didn't shoot well. He was 0 for 4. 2 of those were 3-pointers. But he played well. He had 3 rebounds. They were 3 offensive rebounds. He had an assist. Watch Colin Hartman on defense because, Andy, you mentioned this. He's in the right position. He goes and he plays really good help defense. His man isn't beating him to the point where, it's causing other guys to be out of position. That sometimes happens to Troy. These are the kind of things that don't happen to Colin. And when we talk about Colin Hartman things, that's what we're talking about. And I think he's a really important player on a team like this that has so much talent, so much scoring ability. You need guys who are smart about moving the ball. You need guys who can keep possessions alive with offensive rebounds. You need guys who can be in the right position on defense so that you can force an extra 1 or 2 passes, because with a shorter shot clock, that now is going to be more likely to force a shot at the end of the shot clock. And a lot of those things, you don't see them in the box score. You've got to watch really closely to see. That's what Colin does. And just diving on the floor. I think he and Robert Johnson, another one of the themes we've seen is those guys really leading this team with effort and grit and hustle. And so I thought another solid, it was a solid outing from everybody, and I think Colin fell right into that. And I just think, with him, always be careful. The point category, some of the box score numbers, they're not going to tell the story, but watch the games and you really see the contribution that he makes.
Yeah, I would agree on Hartman, and I think on Bielfeldt, what you brought up is a really good point in that when I envisioned, when he came to IU, what I envisioned him doing was pretty much what he did tonight, the role that he played in terms of, really playing inside, giving the team a lot of good minutes, some muscle on the interior, good rebounding, and things like that. So maybe that's just me not knowing whether he can shoot from the outside, but certainly when I look at performances and how he did, what we saw from him tonight, I think, was exactly what I would have expected coming in.
Hey, by the way, real quick, from Twitter, Brody Miller of the IDS just tweeted that Tom Crean jokes that he feels bad for opponents scouting because the plays that IU is running don't look like they're supposed to, which is nice. Funny early season coach humor. Crean's showing a little bit more of a humorous side here, late in the offseason and early in the season. He's got jokes this year.
Yeah, that's
it's
good.
The more relaxed Tom Crean that we've been hearing about.
Well, that's funny. I can tell you that I've been trying to put in an inbounds play for my daughter's team that I coach, and we're 2 games in. We've practiced it many times, even before the last game, and every time that I've said to set up for the play when we get the ball underneath, they all look at me like they have no idea what I'm talking about. And I actually think, though, that in spite of that, we've managed to score off of nearly every inbounds play just because the other team has no idea what's going on. Maybe I'm distracting them. I don't know. So, sometimes it's good to have plays drawn up, but it's not necessary to execute them correctly in order to score.
Just show them the Cody Zeller game-winning out-of-bounds play.
Yeah,
show them that video, and it'll.
There you go. Then it'll resonate a little bit more. We'll see. We'll try it again. We'll try it again tomorrow. They told me that tomorrow when we play that if I yell for it, that they'll actually do it. We'll see what happens.
We'll see.
So before we wrap up, I'll give just a very brief Austin P overview, and then we'll throw it to you guys for final thoughts and wrap things up tonight. So I don't know a great deal about Austin Peay other than that they weren't very good last year, and based on the fact that they're getting boat raced by Vanderbilt right now, they're not very good this year. They're currently down about 4 minutes left in the game. They're down 75-34. From a Pomeroy rating standpoint, after tonight's Eastern Illinois game, which is already updated on the site, IU's up to second in offense and 75th on defense. So I feel like I should take a picture of my computer screen and see how things look. But Eastern Illinois is now ranked 277th, and Austin Peay is ranked 278th. So that would seem to suggest that we're not going to be in for a particularly close game. We may have another shot for Tim Priller to tie or potentially even best his season or his career high of 2 points that he tied this evening. So I don't think a huge challenge. Austin Peay actually in the Ohio Valley, which is the same conference that Eastern Illinois is. So not sure that there is a whole lot to get excited about as you see them coming to town. I think next Thursday's game against Creighton will be a bit more of a test, even though they're picked toward the lower part of the Big East. I think will certainly be from a talent level the biggest test before IU heads to Maui. So with that, I will we'll go around the horn for final thoughts, and we'll wrap up the first real show of the season. So Will, I'll go to you first for final thoughts.
Final thought. Overall, obviously very pleased about the game. It was everything that we expected it would be. One of the bigger takeaways that I had that we didn't get to bring up on the show today was the ability to spread the ball. A lot of people had double digits today. I believe 6 of them. Blackman Jr., Troy Williams, Farrell, Bielfeldt, and then Johnson. Everybody, broke double digits. And I like how they can spread the ball today. I like how everybody got their fair share of touches and everybody was making their shots. But if you can spread the ball like that, the defense is going to have a hard time figuring out who to cover. So, let's keep it up, and I'm excited to see if they can do the same thing here on Monday.
All right, Jared, what about you?
Yeah, I think for me the biggest takeaway from this game, and especially when you watch these early season games against the teams that are in the mid-200s and the 300s in the Pomeroy ratings, we know that they can't tell us too much. I think the first thing that you want to see is a nice big point differential like tonight, because really good Indiana teams, they make mincemeat of these opponents, and they play well, and they win these games going away like Indiana did tonight. I liked after that little lull at the start of the second half, kind of put the foot on their throat and ended the game strong. And I think you look for habits. You look for little signs of things, right? It's not necessarily about the results. It's kind of about the process, and you're looking for the process the team is playing with. And the biggest thing I take away from this game is what I mentioned right as I hopped on, which is that I thought, watching many possessions, more possessions than not, that this team looked like it was having fun playing defense, and that there was a togetherness there and a sort of a recognition of what they wanted to do. And it wasn't perfect, and there's a long way to go, but I think if we're looking for just something to build on, because what's the biggest question about this team coming into this year? Can this team field a top 100 defense? Can they possibly be a top 80, a top 70, top 60 defense? Because each little step that they make, that raises the ceiling on how good this team can be. And I thought tonight, to me, we saw some signs of a team that has a different defensive mentality. And seeing that it's only one game, we can only take so much from it, but that to me was really encouraging to see. And I think if we see it against Austin Peay and see it against Creighton, and it's something that we take into Maui, we have a chance to be really successful out there. So far so good. Really solid first 40 minutes of the season for Indiana.
Yeah, to build on that a little bit before I get to final thoughts, I thought the same thing watching this. Guys really seemed excited about playing defense, excited when they made a good play. There was one in particular, they forced, I think it was Johnson, to step on the baseline. The guys were really excited. They, forced guys to take tough shots. Even a couple of those, Robert Johnson played really good defense, kind of got back down, and, guy made a tough shot over him. Nobody's going to gripe if you force teams to make tough shots and they make them. That's just going to happen. That's part of basketball. But I think we saw more of that, and I think we saw that in flashes against Bellarmine. And you see that there's a little bit more of that, so you just kind of look for that to build and build and build over the course of the season. So I think that definitely a positive sign coming out of this game, and really something to watch. That did those solid defensive stretches get a little bit longer and a little bit longer as we go through the season, and if they can. Again, no one is challenging this team to be an elite defensive team in terms of the top 10 or the top 20. They need to be functional to a little bit better than functional. And I think with the offense that this team has, they're going to be just fine. And I think that really is probably what I'll have my final thought about is the offense. Tonight for large stretches of this game, the team was really locked in, and they ended up at 1.33 points per possession, and that really dropped down there toward the end of the game when when some of the reserves were in there, which I think is what you'd expect. I think the turnover percentage of 24% is indicative of some of the struggles there toward the end when you had guys in there that weren't used to playing a whole lot. But for the balance of the game, IU was in the 1.5 point per possession range. I think we saw the things that make this offense so exciting, that made this team so fun to watch last year in long stretches. And I think actually, they've gotten better in some ways offensively, which is kind of frightening, but you saw during some stretches of what Thomas Bryant can do in the pick and roll. You saw what Bielfeldt can bring from an offensive rebounding standpoint, and you still have the guys that can knock down threes, with Johnson shooting well. And on a night where Yogi, struggled a little bit with his deep shot, made some nice mid-range jumpers, made a runner on the wing, made some baskets inside. I thought you just saw a little bit of what we lamented not seeing as much against Bellarmine, where the second half was just kind of ugly, waiting for the game to get over. And I don't think anybody was or had any reason to really be worried about the offense. But tonight, on that end of the floor, you certainly saw what makes this team so explosive, and what makes you that intent on getting the defense a little bit better, because the offense can carry this team in stretches, but the defense needs to continue to get better. And so step one of the season looked pretty good. You can only evaluate it against the competition that's in front of you and go from there. And I think see more of the same thing. And I thought there were definitely stretches even toward the end of the game when even though the beginning of the second half was a little bit sloppy again, I thought they really locked in a little bit better than that. They had been outscored 10-8 going into under 16, but I don't think they were outscored anytime after that, and really I don't believe gave up more than, they just kind of looking through here, more than 6 points between any other set of timeouts until the very end, which again I kind of toss out a little bit for that from that standpoint. So I thought overall good performance. You can't ask for much more. Nobody got hurt, which is pretty much what we said about the exhibition season, and everybody got some good experience in playing time. So can't ask for much more than that at this stage of the game, and we'll go from there and get ready for the Austin Peay game on Monday. So with that, I think we'll wrap things up. Would encourage everybody to sign up for our newsletter. While everybody gets really excited to see the end of the bench guys get into the game, for someone like myself who ends up doing lineup analysis, it makes things a little bit tougher and a little bit take a little bit longer. But it's a labor of love, so we'll get that out. I'll work on that here this evening. We'll get the newsletter out tomorrow, so make sure you subscribe to that. I think we're up over 1,300 now, so hopefully we can close in on the 1,400 mark pretty soon. And we will be back on Monday night. The Austin Peay game is at 7 o'clock Eastern time again, so same time as a lot of these games have been. But as Will mentioned earlier, we'll actually be on, I'm not sure what channel it's on, but I know I won't have to watch it on my computer screen. So
I think it's just Big Ten Network.
I feel good about that. I would assume that's a Big Ten Network game, so that'll be hopefully Big Ten Network. We'll obviously send out the info on that to confirm. But 7 o'clock Monday night, we'll be here right after the show, and hopefully at full strength. Ryan had some technical issues tonight. He may or may not just be watching the USC football game, and they're losing Colorado right now.
He's celebrating the Padres trade for Craig Kimbrell, and
that could it could
or
be
trading Craig Kimbrell for like 6 prospects.
Well, he's certainly not celebrating USC losing to Colorado 7-3 in the second quarter at this point. So hopefully he'll be able to work his way through his technical issues and be back, and we'll be at full strength. So thanks to Will and Jared for popping on. And with that, we'll wrap up this edition of the Assembly Call. We will talk to you on Monday night.